This is Brigid here. I am your hostess for the evening and resident chef. We are going to be cooking some healthy foods here as part of Middletown Wellness Week. And tonight we're going to be cooking a plant-based burger with a homemade coleslaw and some French fries. And we are going to have hopefully a balanced mixture of handcrafted and homemade with some shortcuts that will make your meal easier and possible to get on the table in more or less an hour. So you should all have recipes with you and equipment lists and all of that, and that were forwarded to you. I want to talk a little bit about the equipment list because sometimes people get a little nervous with chefs and all the gadgets they have. The food processor is optional. You can get through this meal without a food processor. That's really the only kind of extraordinary thing that I'm going to be using. And also, yeah, really that's it. So if you don't have a food processor, don't worry, you can get through the recipe without it. We are going to start with putting our rice on, which I have cooking already behind me. I'll talk a little bit about rice. This is the rice I'm using tonight, which is a sushi rice. It's a short grain rice. Short grain rices are stickier and help when you're going to make things like veggie burgers and risotto burgers, things like that, is to have a short grain rice. Risotto is also a short grain rice. I've chosen tonight to use a white rice instead of a brown rice to aid in you getting the meal on the table in less than an hour. If you were to use a brown rice, it's a healthier option and gives you more protein in the meal, but it will add a good half an hour to 40 minutes to making the recipe here today. So the first thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to make the coleslaw. And there are a couple of things that are optional in the recipe. It's optional for you to use scallions. If you don't like scallions or onions of any kind, you don't have to put them in there. It's also optional. The apple juice and the poppy seeds in the recipe are optional. The poppy seeds just make the recipe look festive, and the apple juice gives it an added dimension to the flavor. In fact, tonight, I'm not even going to use apple juice. I'm going to be using a little bit of applesauce, so you can substitute other things in your kitchen if you don't have the precise thing that's on the recipe. So first things first, we're going to take the recipe calls for half a head of cabbage, and the cabbage has, you can see in here, this heart to it. It's kind of a triangular shaped piece that you want to get out before you do anything with the cabbage. It's tough, it's not really edible, and just take it and discard it. And then basically you want to be creating a shred of your cabbage. So you can start anywhere you want really and just cut with thin slices. You can turn it, if you get to the point where you want to rotate it, you can rotate it and cut it from a different angle. And you're just trying to get thin enough slices that when you dress the cabbage, that it would be easy to eat and provide mouth-sized bites. So I'm almost done with mine here, and if you're doing this at home, you might almost be done with yours as well. And I'm just going to put that in a bowl here so that we can toss it with some of the other ingredients later. So this is just cabbage in a bowl. And then the next ingredient we're going to work with is a carrot, just regular old carrot. You need to peel it in order to use it. So you just take a carrot peeler. Again, if you don't have a carrot peeler, you can always peel a carrot with a knife. It takes you a bit longer, but you can get there in the end. So don't worry too much about all the equipment. So for this, we're going to use a box grater, which most of us have at home because we all love cheese and we love pizza in this country. So we all have means to be shredding our cheese. And you're just going to take on the biggest side of the grater and grate your carrot. You could also do this in a food processor if you have one and you have the blade attachments for shredding. It makes really quick work of it, but we're only doing 1 carrot, so I think we're going to make it okay with the box grater here. And once we have the carrot done, we're going to put that in with the cabbage, and we're going to move on to the next ingredient. So that's it. It's just shredded carrot. Goes right in with the cabbage. Another shortcut if you don't want to do this yourself, I mean, this really only takes about 5 minutes to make this recipe, from beginning to end, maybe 7. But if you want a shortcut, you can buy bags of cabbage mix already made in the grocery store. They're a little bit more expensive than doing it yourself. For example, a bag of pre-made mix might cost you almost $5, or a whole head of cabbage costs you $1.50. So it really comes down to what your budget's like and how much convenience you want to have available to you. So that's our carrot going into the bowl. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add apple. Apple is a great addition to slaw because it's really this particular one. This particular apple is a Granny Smith apple. It's incredibly tart, and it just gives another lighter dimension to a slaw and brighter dimension to a slaw, and really makes it a little bit more interesting. So I'm just taking an apple and topping and tailing it, cutting the top and the bottom off, and peeling it kind of like you would peel a grapefruit if you were trying to get the skin off, or an orange, and just following around, and remove that so you can see, following around the edge of the peel to get the skin off the apple. You could do it with the vegetable peeler. I find this to be faster and more efficient, but again, use whatever's comfortable to you. So we're going to get the last bits of that off of there. And again, I'm trying to do this right closely in front of me, so I don't have my trash available to me, so I'm just collecting all of my composting bits here in a small container. We're going to cut this to get the core out of the center, because we don't want to eat the core and we don't want to get all the seeds that are in there. And then again, on the large side of the box grater, we're going to grate this. The recipe here calls for 1 apple. You can put 2 if you want to. You could put 3 if you want 3. It's really just a matter of what your flavor balance wants to be in the end. I tend to taste things as I go along, and I rely a lot on color. The balance of the color will really tell you what the balance of the flavor is going to be. So we're just going to continue to grate this. Don't grate your fingers off. That's why I'm taking these small pieces and I'm not grating it to the very end. We have our apple. Bring this bowl back. Put the apple in here. And again, you can see kind of the mix of that. I would be tempted, I don't want to stop here and take too much time on this one thing because we have a lot to get through, but I would probably myself choose to put another apple in there and just give it a little bit more brightness and balance and kind of the composition of the flavors, but it'll be delicious with just that amount of apple that there is in there. So that is the base of the slaw, and now we need a dressing. So for this dressing, we're going to use 1/3 cup of sour cream. If you'll notice, a lot of the ingredients that I'm using are organic. They don't need to be, but if you have organic in your budget, particularly when it comes to certain fruits and vegetables and dairy, it's a good idea to use organic, but again, it all comes down to your personal budget. And yeah, that's that. So this is 1/3 cup of sour cream is going in here. and then we're gonna put some mayonnaise in there. And some of you might wonder, well, what if I don't like mayonnaise, or what if I'm trying not to eat things that are high in fat? You can really substitute the amount of mayonnaise in here, the 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, with more sour cream. If you wanted more complexity, you could put replace it with creme fraiche to give it 2 different dimensions of dairy instead of just having the one. But really what the mayonnaise is doing is giving it mouthfeel and cohesion and holding the dressing together a bit more, and that's what fats do. So we're going to get the mayonnaise here.
Brigid, we have a question.
Yes.
Could Helen use plain Greek yogurt instead of sour cream?
She could. She could. Anything that's in that creamy realm that would stick together and hold the dressing together and is fine. Again, like I said, a lot of people are avoiding mayonnaise because it's not the healthiest choice, but it does really give nice mouthfeel to a dressing, and it helps it stick to the vegetables and fruits.
Brigid, I noticed that you're using Vegenaise. What's the difference?
This is that I'm using Vegenaise.
Is it,
This
was
is
that
mayonnaise.
Vegenaise?
No,
I'm
this
sorry,
is
I thought it was
mayonnaise.
Vegenaise.
No, this is mayonnaise. You could use Vegenaise if you wanted to. Yeah, you know, there's so many ways that you can substitute. Whenever you're approaching any recipe, don't freak out if you don't have precisely the ingredients that are on hand. I'm going to give you a lot of suggestions here of things that you can substitute, because we all have different taste buds, and we all have different health priorities and different budget, you know, in front of us. And it's important to know that you can substitute things. It's not going to be disastrous. In very few cases is it going to be disastrous. Like I said, I'm not putting apple juice in here. I'm putting a little bit of applesauce instead. I want the dressing to be a little bit thicker, and that's just that. And we're going to stir this up. And I'm also going to cut my scallions, which I forgot about laying in that little bowl. And I'm going to put some apple cider vinegar on top of these vegetables in this bowl. And we need a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. It's not a lot, but it does matter. Balances the flavor, and it will almost cook the cabbage for you, so it's a little bit softer. So again, these are optional. You know, you get scallions and they have these little hairs on the end, and sometimes they even have a dirty sheathing on them. I've already peeled those off, the outer sheathing on this, so that I don't get that in the end product. You just cut these little tips off, little hair tips. You don't want that in your slaw. And then you can just use your chef's knife or a paring knife and just cut the white ends of the scallions off. You can use the green ends too. It's all up to you. They get a little bit stronger when you get up to the green end. Most recipes just call for the white ends of the scallions. So that's what we're going to put in here with our vegetables. And I'm a big proponent of, when you're working at home, you know, I'm a chef and I have a commercial kitchen. When I'm in a commercial kitchen, I follow all the health guidelines and I use gloves and all of that. But when you're feeding your family and you're washing your hands at your own stove all the time, feel free to put your hands in there if you want to stir something up. So we're going to just put this dressing, which looks like this, in there. It's a little bit loose. I'm going to stick this on the top of here, and really all we're going to do is let it sit and rest until the rest of the meal is done. And we have rice that has been cooked behind me, and that's going to sit as well. It's important that you use freshly cooked rice because we need it to be sticky. And after it sits for a while, it's not sticky. And that's important because otherwise your burgers aren't going to hold their shape. So again, We're just gonna fold these ingredients in here. Toss that to get it wet. At first, you're probably gonna think it doesn't have enough dressing, but that vinegar is going to help the vegetables sweat a little bit, which just means they're gonna start, some of their juices are gonna be released. It's not like anything horrible. And you can already see that that's happening a little bit here in this bowl, is that it's not a lot of dressing, and it will do the trick. So at the end, before you eat it, you can taste it and see if you want to add salt and pepper. I think it's quite nice, fresh the way that it is, because you've got a lot of other flavors going on. But we can test that right before we eat it in a bit. So that is just going to sit and wait for us to need it. So the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to prepare some burger toppings, and I'm just going to put them out on a plate. You can choose your toppings. I have some tomato here. I have some red onion. We have the mayonnaise. There's some ketchup, lettuce here. You can put almost anything that you want on a burger. You know, it's up to every individual. You can put avocado on it, anything that you would put on a regular burger. Avocado is nice. We don't have any here tonight, but avocado is nice because it gives you healthy fats. And when you're eating a plant-based diet, you need fats, and you just don't want animal fats. So we're just going to slice some tomato here quickly. That on a plate. If you want some red onion, you just cut the top end off of it and peel the skin back. I like a burger that has complete rings of red onion on it, but if you don't get complete rings, don't panic. It still tastes the same. And the red onion's nice because it has beautiful color, and it has a little bit more complexity than just a basic yellow onion. On there. Then we have our lettuce here. You can use any lettuce you want. You can use bib lettuce, you can use iceberg lettuce, you can use arugula, whatever you want. I just happen to pick a lettuce that I like that has some baby greens here, and I think they go nicely with the burger. So we're going to put those out there. And let's see, I also have some cheese here. You want to get a cheese that's meltable, that isn't stringy. I'm choosing provolone, but equally you could use cheddar, you could use American. If you're into fancy cheeses, you could even use Roquefort or some other kind of blue cheese on top of it. So it's really up to you. But I find that the provolone melts and works nicely, so we'll just put that out and have that ready. Okay, so we have our coleslaw resting, we have our toppings there, and the next thing that we're going to do is focus some attention on the actual plant-based burger itself. And we've already got the rice, as I said, cooked, so it should be here resting, and hopefully is sticky, which it is, so I'm going to leave the lid on there to keep that warm. So there are a couple things I want to talk to you about this plant-based burger. I made some modifications to it so that it would be faster to get through the process. I'm going to tell you where I've made the modifications so that if you'd like, we can actually share with you the recipe for the more the extended version, if you will. And the extended version just has more protein in it and a higher chance of success in terms of handling the end product, because you rest things in the fridge for an hour and things of that nature that make it's less likely that your burgers are going to fall apart when you cook them. But mainly the biggest difference is in the difference between the brown rice and the white rice. Brown rice is full of protein, and it's a really healthy item for anyone who's pursuing a plant-based diet to be consuming. So for this recipe, we're going to need to prepare a yellow onion, and that's one of the first things that's going to go into our frying pan over here, where I have put a couple of tablespoons of olive oil already to have it ready. And it's just going to warm up there for a little bit. And I apologize if you can hear the humming, but my stovetop is back there. I don't want to be turning around a lot to talk to you and you just be looking at my back, so I'm going to use this one instead. A little bit of a shortcut on onions that you're going to be dicing, particularly when you're dicing them by hand, is if you cut the top end of the onion off and then cut it in half. You've got this 1/2. We only need 1/2 for the recipe anyway, and peel it, leaving the butt end intact. I'm going to show you, and a lot of you might already know this trick, but I'm going to show you how to dice the onion quickly and easily. So you put it flat on your board and you slice horizontally almost to the end and not through. And you keep doing that until you get to the top of the onion. And again, don't panic if you slice all the way through. No one's watching you at home and you're watching. And then you go straight down from top to bottom and you just space it to make a teeny bit of a dice. You keep going like that, again pointing towards the butt end. And then you're just going to slice it like you normally would to make a sliced onion, and what's going to come out here is this nice fine dice. So everything's kind of similar size. And in the burger, it's nice to have all the ingredients kind of similar size so you get the texture the same in each bite. So just take these. And I'm not too worried about the fact that I had my carrots and other things on this cutting board because it is a plant-based burger, so a couple of other little things get in there. It's not going to really harm you. So we're going to cook the onion until it's a little bit translucent. It's going to take a minute or so, depending on how high your heat is. You don't want to fry the onion. You don't want it getting brown. You want it to be at a hot enough temperature to cook, but not so hot that you're really frying it and browning it. So we're going to let that just sit there for a little bit. Again, I don't know if you can see that in there, but that's just cooking away. And the next thing that we're going to put our attention towards is mushrooms. In the recipe, I think I put in the instructions that you can use any kind of mushroom that you like. I'm going to grab mine here. Tonight I chose baby portobellos. You could equally choose shiitakes, which are kind of the best mushroom to use in this recipe just because of the mouthfeel and the texture, and it is more similar to an actual beef burger when you get your final product. But the portobello, either the large or the small, the baby ones, have great flavor too, and they also have good texture when they're cooked. I would just say that if you're using large portobellos, the big ones, you should take a spoon and scrape all of the gills out of them. You don't want to be cooking the gills and eating the gills. They're just the fibrous pieces that come out from the stem of the mushroom. If it were in this mushroom, there would just be little gills coming from the stem towards the outer edge. You can dice mushrooms by hand, really simply, and just chop them. I'm going to, for expedience sake tonight, throw them in my food processor. And you just throw them in if you have a food processor with a regular blade. I like to cut them in half so that they get a little bit of a head start in there. And if they're a really big mushroom like this, I'll cut them in quarters. And you might say, why are you doing that when you're going to chop them in the food processor anyway? Well, food processor can only do so much. It needs a little help sometimes. You get small mushrooms, you can throw those in whole. And really, you just want to pulse the mushrooms in there a little bit so that they have a similar dice to to the onions a similar size. Because again, what we're trying to do is replicate, it's a plant-based burger, not a veggie burger. And its objective is to try and mimic a beef burger. Most people get accustomed to a certain texture and mouthfeel of a burger, and when they're trying to substitute something, they don't always want a veggie burger, which tends to be mushier and harder to keep crisp. That being said, this recipe is a great base for making a veggie burger. If you wanted to substitute some of the mushrooms with something else, or skip the mushrooms altogether, you would get a much lighter flavored end result. You wouldn't get kind of that meatiness that the mushroom gives it, but you could do a fine dice of orange, yellow peppers. Wouldn't really recommend green peppers. You could put peas in there to get extra protein. You just want to make sure that when you're swapping something, you're swapping a similar volume. You're swapping 1 for 1 so that you're not overloading the recipe with too much stuff, I'll call it, in it, that the rice can't stick together and the egg that we're going to use can't do its job to hold the whole end result together. Another option that you have here when you're making a plant-based burger is using flax eggs if you're not eating eggs. I use flax eggs all the time. My business is a vegan business, so it comes in really handy dandy for us. So if you're trying to avoid eggs, this calls for 2 eggs. A flax egg is a tablespoon of flax meal and 2 tablespoons of water. So you could easily just put 2 or 3 tablespoons of flax meal in here. There's enough liquid going on that you don't really have to add the water with it, and it will help the whole recipe stick together. So I tend to pulse when I'm trying to do a dice in a food processor. If you just turn it on and let it run, it's going to mush everything. So all you really need to do is get them into some small enough pieces that they'll cook up nicely. And if you have any experience with mushrooms, you'll know that they shrink. So don't worry about having so much mushroom in here. It will shrink down quite quickly. And these mushrooms are going to take about 6 to 9 minutes to cook. So we are going to talk about some other stuff while that's happening. And I told you we'd be taking some shortcuts tonight to make this possible for you to get a meal on the table in a reasonable amount of time. We will not be making French fries from scratch, although if you are adventurous and you want to go down that path, there are plenty of recipes out there that tell you how to do that. We are going to just be using packaged frozen French fries tonight, so that's going to accompany our meal. And I'm just going to keep stirring this as it cooks. And what we're going to want to do here is put a little bit of salt in with the chopped mushrooms, which will help them. Got a half a teaspoon of salt here that I've already pre-measured, which will help them sweat and create some liquid in there, which will also help them cook. So I'm just mixing them in with the onion, and we're going to let them steam a little bit and create some juices. And I'm going to check, I've got my comrades here, Lori and Lisa, that are in my test kitchen with me. I'm making sure that I stay on track. Don't lead you guys astray in any way. And I think I'm just going to do a little bit of a time check with myself to see where I'm at. And I think right about now, we are supposed to be almost completing the burger recipe in about 5 minutes. So it looks like we're on track. I've got, I've turned my oven on, which you'll want to do now too, to preheat to 4. For me, it's 425 because that's what my package of French fries says. If you're cooking tater tots or a different French fry of your own, you might be cooking sweet potato fries. You may just be cooking wedges. Read your package, and I'm sure that it's going to tell you to put an oven from anywhere from 400 to 450. You want to preheat it. Timing is important so that everything kind of comes out all at the same time, and you have all of your components of your meal hot together. So we've got our stove, our oven preheating. We've got mushrooms kind of, you can see in here, they're melting down a little bit. We're going to continue to stir them. They are creating a little bit of liquid now. That's good. We're going to add a couple of other things to them once they've cooked down a little bit. We're going to add some soy sauce, some balsamic vinegar, and again, talking about substitutions. If you don't have balsamic vinegar, I just found a big chunk of mushroom. I'm going to take that out of there. If you don't have balsamic vinegar, or you don't like balsamic vinegar, there are plenty of other vinegars you can use. I would say that for this recipe, if you're sticking with the mushrooms and you're trying to create a beef burger effect, you're going to want to stick with a dark vinegar, either a red wine vinegar, a sherry vinegar, something that is, I guess you could also use if you wanted Marsala cooking wine, if you like that flavor. But you could use champagne vinegar and white wine vinegar. It's not going to create the same kind of meaty flavor, but it's totally acceptable. I would just avoid flavored vinegars because there are a lot of other flavors going on here. And I don't think that you want to confuse the issue with the tarragon vinegar or vinegar that has dill seasoning or anything like that, and it's just not going to go well with the end result.
Brigid, you mentioned soy sauce. If one is watching their salt intake, can you leave the soy sauce out?
You can leave the soy sauce out. I would say, unless you really have to avoid salt, maybe just get a low sodium soy sauce. And again, quality of ingredients. If you have the budget to spend, the soy sauce that I use is organic, and it's tamari soy. Tamari soy guarantees that it's a pure soy and that it has been aged, and not a lot of soy that you see in the grocery store is processed almost overnight in an accelerated chemical process. And it's not, soy should be like a wine where it's aged in a barrel for a certain amount of time in order to get really rich flavor and in order for it to be healthy for you.